Post Special Award from the Mystery Writers of America in 19... The Golden Buddha Caper. Mike Shane bought the early morning edition of the Miami Daily News at the corner stand a block from the Tamiami coffee shop. "Don't bother with the change, Carl," he told the blind news dealer. "That's only a one spot. Thank you, Mr. Shane. How are things with you these days? You haven't been by for a while?" "Short vacation, Carl. I went down to Key West for a little fishing with a friend of mine, Pete Foley." "Any luck?" "A little," Shane told him. "We went for tarpon and then drifted out in the Gulf Stream for a few days after broad bills. Pete and I landed a 150-pound beauty, but you should have seen the one that got away. He was a monster." Carl laughed. "When I was a kid and could see, the biggest ones always got away." Shane quickly changed the subject to cover his slip. "How's the wife?" "Ailing a little, complaining a lot, but that's the way it goes when you're married, Mr. Shane. We get along. How's a big red-headed fella like you escaped matrimony so long?" Shane chuckled. "Just lucky, I guess. One fine day your matrimonial luck is going to run out, Mr. Shane." "I'll be past tomorrow," Shane promised Carl, and went along to the Tamiami. He settled in a booth and ordered ham and eggs, hot biscuits, a side of hash-brown potatoes, and told the pretty Cuban waitress who usually waited on him, "Keep the coffee coming." "Where is it you have been lately?" the waitress asked in careful, nearly unaccented English. "Me and our cook George have missed you," Shane grinned. "I'll bet. Tell George I'd like those eggs over easy, and you'd better bring me a glass of orange juice to start. How have you been, Dolores?" "Muy bueno, Señor Shane. Very good. It is the next week when Ramon and I finally marry. He has received the promotion and a raise." "Good for Ramon," Shane said. "Give him my congratulations, will you?" "That I will do, Mr. Shane," Dolores said. "I will squeeze the oranges for your juice myself." "Thank you," Shane said, and unfolded his copy of the Daily News. He read Tim Rourke's column first. Shane's reporter friend was deploring the rise of street crime in the seedier sections of Miami and Miami Beach and praising a system of neighborhood patrols being organized by some of the young men in those sections. Shane chuckled. Tim, he knew, would get a blast about that from Chief of Police Will Gentry, who had the professional's dislike of anything resembling citizen vigilante action. "Damn it, though," Shane muttered to himself. "Somebody has got to look after these elderly people getting mugged just about every time they venture out into the streets." He wished the young citizens patrol luck. Shane read his morning paper, as he did just about everything else, in a hurry, scanning heads and subheads, snatching a vital paragraph here, another there, scanning the obituaries. But one head deep in the paper caught his full attention. Taiwan's Golden Buddha, coming to United States. Later, Shane would try to explain to Lucy Hamilton, his longtime secretary, confidant, and alter ego, why that particular article alerted him. "I suppose the word golden did it," he told Lucy, "with people buying gold bars as if they were pancakes as an inflation hedge, and rumors going around that the OPEC oil sheiks are thinking of taking gold instead of dollars for their damned oil. It couldn't miss catching my eye." "I take it, Michael, you still refuse to believe there is such a thing as extrasensory perception?" Lucy said with a mischievous glint in her eyes. Shane stretched lazily. "Do you know what I'm thinking right now? You want me to mix drinks." "Bullseye. Now is that or is it not ESP?" "It is not," Lucy said. "Call it telepathy if you wish. Now if you knew I'm not about to mix the drinks. Got the message?" Shane grinned. "It's my turn." "Over and out," Lucy said. "Out to the kitchen and hit me lightly." That morning, after his breakfast at the Tamiami coffee shop, Shane drove to his East Flagler Street office wondering what the new day would bring. After a week's vacation, something interesting, he decided, should be on his desk. The last two cases the big detective had worked before leaving for Key West had been dull and routine. Dull and routine paid bills, and that was good. But tracing an absconding bank official to the gaming tables of Reno and Las Vegas, and finding a man's missing wife honeymooning in Acapulco instead at the bottom of Biscayne Bay hadn't been the sort of challenges Shane liked. "Hello, fisherman," Lucy greeted him when he reached his office. "You look bright and bushy-tailed this morning. You forgot to call in yesterday." While fishing on Pete Foley's boat, Shane had kept in touch with Lucy in office routine by radiophone. Shane patted her cheek, then kissed her. "Missed you, Angel." Lucy returned his quick kiss, then said in a brisk voice, "Urgent telephone call for you yesterday afternoon." She looked at her notes. "A Dr. Feldman from the Institute of Oriental Studies, and that's out at the University of Miami in case you didn't know." "He comes across as a very nice man. I've made reservations for you to fly out of here tomorrow for Los Angeles and from there to Taiwan. Your passport is in order and on your desk." Shane scowled. "You know I seem to have missed something. You'd better run that past me again, Lucy." "All right. You had an urgent phone call yesterday from a Dr. Feldman. I've made reservations for you to fly." "Hold it right there." Shane held up his hand. "I'm to fly to Los Angeles and from there to Taiwan. My passport is in order and on my desk." "You really are a quick study," Lucy said. "And you are sending me up," Shane said in a good-natured voice. "You haven't mentioned why I'm on my way to Taiwan tomorrow." "Didn't I?" Lucy was all innocence. "How very careless of me. It seems nationalist China has an extensive collection of early Buddhist art that has been loaned to Dr. Feldman's department for a tour of the United States. As a cultural counter to the recent warm-up of relations between United States and Communist China and withdrawal of diplomatic recognition of nationalist China, Shane told Lucy while she gaped at him. Among the collection is the famous golden Buddha carved from solid gold to resemble the original Shinkaoshan Temple Buddha cover with gold leaf. It is reputed this collection may outshine the recent King Tut artifacts sent to tour this country. He grinned at her astonishment. "So what else is new?" Shane reached across the desk and gently raised Lucy's lower jaw. "It was my turn to be a smart aleck," he told her. "Now tell me what I'm supposed to do when I reach Taiwan." Lucy had recovered and glanced at her notes again. "The collection will be coming by ship and accompanied by a doctor. Scott. It seems Dr. Scott wants someone with your accomplishments to accompany him and the collection until it is safely here in Miami to begin the national tour. I take it there are rumors adrift that somebody somewhere isn't pleased with the publicity nationalist China is about to receive." "I'm in the picture," Shane told Lucy. "Tim Rourke wants you to meet him for lunch at the Scotch and Sirloin," Lucy said. "He wants a favor so the lunch is on his expense account." "I have a sneaking hunch what he wants, Lucy. Can't you phone him that I'm still fishing?" "Michael." Shane shrugged his wide shoulders. Okay. I'll meet him at 12:30. He went into his office, closing the door behind him, and cleared a space on his littered desk for his feet. Rolling back in his swivel chair, he picked up the phone. Because Lucy was phoning Tim, he had to wait a minute before she answered. "Angel, get me this Dr. Feldman who sounds so nice on the phone," Shane told her. "By the way, you've arrived at a fee with him?" "Certainly. Any complaints?" "He haggled a bit, pled departmental budget, but I strongly suspect the nationalists are picking up the tab." "Glad that's taken care of," Shane said. "Now ring him for me, will you?" Shane heard the call go through the university switchboard before a cultured voice said, "Yes?" "Shane here." Studying the toes of his Oxfords, Shane decided he'd better get them shined. "Miss Hamilton has made all the arrangements for me to fly to Taiwan, Dr. Feldman. I thought you might want to fill me in on a few more details. I understand that I'm to accompany Dr. Scott back with the Buddha exhibit." Yes. Just a moment." Shane could hear the murmur of Dr. Feldman's voice as he spoke to someone in his office before he came back on the line. "Yes," he said again. "Can we meet somewhere for lunch? There's a rather decent cafeteria here on the campus." "I have a lunch date," Shane said. "Can I run out there this afternoon?" "I'm afraid not," Dr. Feldman told him. "I have a seminar on Oriental art scheduled and then a faculty meeting. The bane of a cloistered existence, I assure you. But it can't be helped. Since we're to deal with budgetary matters, it will last into the evening." "What can you tell me over the phone that I should know before I leave?" Shane asked. "You'll meet Dr. Scott at the International Hotel in Taipei. We are informed there are some very ugly rumors circulating." "Rumors of an attempted hijack?" Shane asked. "I believe so. Our phone connection was not very good and Dr. Scott is dedicated but somewhat of an alarmist. So much is involved, however, that we don't dare take any risks. Direct orders and more information will come from Dr. Scott when you reach Taipei. Just out of curiosity, Shane said, what is this golden Buddha part of the exhibit worth? It weighs more than 500 pounds and is pure gold, Dr. Feldman told Shane. Divide that by troy ounces at $400 each, or whatever the world price is at any particular time, and you have the intrinsic value of the golden Buddha. But that's like figuring the true worth of a Rembrandt by calculating the cost of paint and canvas. Let's just say that it's priceless in the true sense of the word. Shane whistled softly. I begin to see why your Dr. Scott is worried. We all are, Dr. Feldman assured Shane. By the way, I'm in charge of the exhibit when it arrives safely, with Dr. Scott as my assistant, but the financial backing of the project for the most part comes from the Seaberg Foundation. That's a new one as far as I'm concerned, Shane said. Who are they? I don't really know for certain, Dr. Feldman admitted. I've only met their emissary, a young Chinese. I suspect despite the name, it is a foundation of wealthy nationalist Chinese here in the States. I wasn't encouraged to ask too many questions. But I've cleared the matter with our Department of State. Everything is in order. How is the material, including the golden Buddha, being shipped stateside? Shane asked. By ship. Dr. Scott has made all the arrangements. It will be unloaded in San Francisco and brought in trucks here to Miami. It is far too bulky for air shipment. Doctor, Feldman added as an afterthought, my department here at the university is defraying part of the shipping cost and paying your fee. What about insurance? Shane asked. Even Lloyd's of London won't touch it, Dr. Feldman said. You see, the Republic of China, so-called, claims the golden Buddha as part of their national treasure. Should they somehow get their hands on it? I get the point, Shane said. Luck, Shane, Dr. Feldman said. Shane chuckled. Sometimes I have to make my own luck. But your golden Buddha and the rest of the material for exhibit will be delivered to you here in Florida. One more thing. Advise your Dr. Scott that I'll listen to suggestions, but taking orders is something else again. Well now, Shane. Dr. Feldman was obviously disturbed. You have been hired. I like retained better, Shane interrupted. I'm taking full responsibility, and I'll have to handle security in my own way. If this isn't a satisfactory relationship, you'll have to get someone else. I can name a few reliable private investigators who will jump at the chance to go to Taiwan, all expenses paid. There was a pause. Shane pictured the scholarly man on the other end of the line scratching his head as he tried to make up his mind. All right, I accept your conditions, Dr. Feldman finally said, but you'll have to handle matters with Dr. Scott. I'll manage, Shane promised and hung up. He pressed the button that rang the phone on Lucy's desk. Angel, do me a favor, he said. While I'm waiting through this mail and the reports on my desk that stacked up last week, try to get a line on this mysterious Seaberg Foundation Dr. Feldman tells me is popping for the Golden Buddha exhibit to tour this country. I never heard of that one, Lucy said. Neither have I. And Dr. Feldman knows precious little about the people bankrolling his pet project. I don't want to find out I'm working as an agent for a foreign power without registering with Uncle Sam until it's too late. I'll get back to you, Lucy promised. Tim will meet you at the Scotch and Sirloin at 12:30. He said you'd find him at the bar. Shane laughed. Where else? How Tim wraps himself around all those Boilermakers and stays reasonably sober, I'll never know. He says it's a thin man's knack, Lucy said. By the way, you're booked first class all the way through to Taiwan and back. You can cancel that return reservation, Mike said. I'll be coming back to San Francisco on shipboard. Sometimes I think you have all the fun, Michael, Lucy pouted. 2. An hour before he was to meet Tim Rourke at the Scotch and Sirloin, Shane rolled down his sleeves and shrugged into his sports coat tailored to conceal the bulge of a shoulder holster and .45 automatic. He had 2 reasons to visit Will Gentry on his way to meet Tim. One thing, he was going to need special permission to board an air carrier carrying a weapon or packing one along in his suitcase. Will Gentry had made arrangements with the airline before for Shane. But another reason was the neighborhood patrols Tim was touting in his column. Shane owed the reporter a favor. He was certain this luncheon date was Tim's bid to collect. Will Gentry and Tim, as a reporter, had an uneasy relationship. Covering the crime beat, Tim needed the cooperation of Will from time to time. Yet Rourke was an investigative reporter and stepped on official toes when he had to do so in order to get a story. Shane suspected his would be the role of peacemaker. Tim's column that morning was certain to have raised Will's blood pressure. Gentry was a sometimes irascible man. The suggested citizens' patrols in high-crime areas of Miami Beach, Gentry's jurisdiction, was certain to have sent Will Gentry through the ceiling of his office. Will was a good cop who'd reached his present job by coming up through the ranks, but he had a tendency to go by the book. It had taken him quite a while to get used to some of Shane's more unorthodox methods. "No problem," Will Gentry said when Shane asked him to intervene with airline security. "We'll do it the way we did it last time. You're on special assignment for the department." "I am?" Shane said. "What am I supposed to be doing this time?" "Before you get out of San Francisco, I want you to check in with the Lieutenant Francis of the SFPD. He has a prisoner out there we may want back here when the state of California is finished with him." "Who would that be?" Shane asked. "A two-bit grifter named Tully Franco. We think he offed a character named Fritz the Fixer over a slight disagreement. I'll give you the file. You question him. Francis has him for some scam or other. When you've read the file on the plane tomorrow, question the punk. If you think he may be guilty, and we have a chance of putting him away for murder one, I'll try to get him extradited. Have a heart, Will. I only have a few hours in San Francisco between planes," Shane said. "Then you'll have to work fast," Gentry said with a smug grin. Shane pointed to the morning paper on Gentry's desk. "Have you read Tim Rourke this morning?" The police chief reddened and bit hard on the stub of a cigar in his mouth. "I've read it and it stinks. I need more uniforms. Tim knows it, you know it. Everyone but the city council knows it. As the crime rate rises, inflation paints me into a corner, and any chief of a city this size will tell you the same thing. Uniforms, Shane, not a bunch of half-baked ghetto kids playing vigilante." "It's working in the New York subways," Shane said in a mild voice. "The Red Berets are making a real difference." Gentry regarded Shane with a steady stare. "Yeah, so I've heard," he said finally. "The cops felt exactly as you do before these subway patrols started." "If you're trying to make a point, come to it," Gentry said. "We've known each other long enough to speak frankly, haven't we?" "All right. It's none of my damn business. You're the head cop. But if I were in your shoes, I'd handle these do-good ghetto kids with kid gloves. That way you can keep them under police scrutiny, if not supervision. You're saying I should go along with this citizens patrol idea?" "Would it hurt?" Gentry scowled. "I'll think about it." Shane glanced at his watch and got up to leave. "How about a Dutch treat lunch in the police canteen?" Gentry asked. "I want to hear about all those big fish that got away from you and Pete." "I'm meeting Tim in half an hour at the Scotch and Sirloin. Come along, Tim's buying." "I haven't that much time today," Gentry told Shane in a gruff voice. "By the way, I forgot to ask, what sends you to Taiwan?" Shane quickly filled Gentry in on the details of what he'd come to think about as the golden Buda caper. "You have yourself a piece of cake with chocolate frosting," Will Gentry grumbled. "Why don't we swap jobs one of these days, Shane? I get all the trouble while you're having fun." "Will, good friend, without you shuffling paper behind that desk, nobody would sleep soundly at night in Miami Beach. You are their white knight in the battle against crime and corruption. I'm just a peasant gumshoe in your fief." Gentry cocked an eyebrow as he lit a fresh cigar. "Get the hell out of here, peasant, and take your Blarney Stone with you," he said before he choked on cigar smoke. "Tell Rourke to come see me," Gentry went on when he'd recovered his breath. "I have a message for his ghetto kids on the side of law and order." Shane found the lanky reporter for Miami News, slouched on a bar stool in the Scotch and Sirloin, owlishly regarding his first Boilermaker of the day. "In these pensive moods, Tim," Shane said, sliding onto the adjoining bar stool, "has anyone ever told you there is a marked resemblance between you and a basset hound who has just had his tail caught in a crack?" "Flattery will get you nowhere, Shane," Rourke said without looking around. "I'm contemplating with my inner eye the injustice of big government and the IRS. "Don't tell me you've been audited again," Shane said. "No, I got a raise." "Hurrah." Tim finally looked around. "It's moved me into a higher tax bracket." "Not good?" Shane asked. "Very ungood," Rourke said. "If my figures don't lie, and I'm afraid they don't, that raise amounts to exactly $1.69. "Why complain?" Shane asked. "That should buy you a cup of coffee, a pack of cigarettes, and maybe a morning newspaper." The bartender, with a cheerful, "Good to see you again, Mr. Shane," Served the big detective a Martell's on the rocks. Shane nodded his thanks. I read your column this morning, he told Tim. The question is, has Will Gentry read it yet? Affirmative, Shane said. I stopped by to chat with him on my way here. And? Go see him. Those ghetto kids have a good idea, and I believe Will Gentry can be a lot of help getting them organized, Shane said. That's welcome news. What about you? I hadn't mind you helping them out. They've all heard about you one way or another. This is why I'm breaking a precedent and popping for lunch. Shane finished his drink. Rourke ordered another Boilermaker. I've talked with some of the victimized elderly people trying to make it on fixed incomes, Tim went on to say. It's one hell of a problem. Half the muggings never get reported for fear there will be retaliation. These people can't afford the rents in better sections of this town in Miami. I know, Shane said, scowling. I wish I had the time right now to help out, but I'm off to Taiwan tomorrow morning. When I get back, let's talk about it again, okay? Taiwan? Tim Rourke was wide awake now. What takes you out there? A security job, Shane said. I'm to babysit the Golden Buddha and some other valuable bric-a-brac being shipped by the nationalists for a tour of this country. Can I print this? Talk to a Dr. Feldman out at the university, Shane told him. He's the honcho who retained me for the job. A certain Dr. Scott expects a little dirty work at the crossroads before the Golden Buddha arrives here in Miami. Who's Dr. Scott? Some fusty old antiquarian, I suspect, Shane said. The nervous type, from what I hear. I'll be meeting him on Taiwan. Tim finished his Boilermaker. Let's eat. Suits me, Shane said. Rourke ordered corned beef and cabbage, which he stated was his idea of health food. We're having one of our periodic health fads at the newspaper, he told Shane. Just about everybody is jogging and eating wheat germ on organic lettuce. Sounds great for rabbits, Shane said. I think I'll stick to meat and potatoes. A man of his word, Shane ordered an extra thick sirloin with baked potato, sour cream, and chives. Did you ever hear of the Seaberg Foundation? Shane asked while they were eating. Seaberg? Rourke scowled. I don't think so. Why do you ask? They're sponsoring this Golden Buddha thing, Shane said. Dr. Feldman either doesn't know much about the foundation or isn't saying. Long ago, Shane had discovered a question such as the one he'd just hazarded aroused the bloodhound in Tim Rourke, the instinct that made the man the good investigative reporter he was. He was certain before tomorrow morning and his departure on a flight to San Francisco that Tim would have some information for him, added to what Lucy Hamilton would be able to garner, and she was no mean investigator herself, he'd learned. By the time he was on the plane, Shane expected he would have a fairly complete picture of the mysterious Seaberg Foundation. Shane's insatiable curiosity about everyone and everything involved in whatever case he happened to be working had more than once been the difference between success and failure, sometimes life and death. I'll do some snooping, Tim promised. I'd appreciate it. When he returned to his East Flagler Street office, Shane was surprised to see a puzzled expression on his secretary's pretty face. I've tried the library here in town, the Library of Congress, even the IRS, Michael, she said. Nobody seems to know much of anything about this Seaberg Foundation. Are they listed in Miami Beach, Miami, or anywhere else here in Florida? Lucy had been poring over telephone directories. I don't think so. Well, Gentry called. You're cleared to carry a weapon aboard tomorrow's flight. That's good. You know I'd better get packed for this junket. Can you hold the fort here if I take you out to supper this evening? Lucy smiled. That's what you pay me for, Michael. Supper would be a nice perk, however. Any special place in mind? You decide. There's a new Cantonese restaurant over on Biscayne Boulevard, Lucy said tentatively. Maybe we'd better tune your taste buds for Taiwanese cooking. What do you say? Shane nodded. Sounds good, Angel. I'm glad you approve. By the way, Shane said, I mentioned this mysterious Seaberg Foundation to Tim Rourke at lunch, and he's promised to come up with something. You're a bit worried about this Golden Buddha thing, aren't you, Michael? No more than I usually am tackling something like this, Shane told her. But a few things don't make sense. Yet. For example, why me? What do you mean? Lucy asked. Shane sat on the corner of her desk. The nationalist government has plenty of security people. They could guard the shipment until it reaches San Francisco. I asked Dr. Feldman that question, Lucy said. While we were haggling about your fee, he said this Dr. Scott had already talked with officials out there and they weren't willing to guard the shipment. Did he say why? Lucy shook her head. No. Maybe they're miffed about withdrawal of diplomatic recognition, Shane said. And then again, maybe there's more to it than that. I've done some figuring, Lucy told Shane. Do you have any idea how much 500 pounds of gold is worth? A heap, I'd say. How much? Well, there are 12 troy ounces to a pound when you're weighing gold. I never realized that. So now you know, Lucy said pertly. When you multiply by the 500 pounds and say gold is now $400 an ounce, a troy ounce, you're talking about $2,400,000. Shane whistled softly. We're sitting into a high-stake game, aren't we? You and this Dr. Scott are, Lucy pointed out. I'll just be sitting here working my fingers to the bone while you skylark in the Far East. Come along then, Shane invited. I can't, and you darned well know it, Lucy said. Somebody has to watch the store. Shane leaned over, raised her face, and gently kissed Lucy Hamilton. What was that for? She asked. Just a passing fancy, Shane teased. Now I'd better move along and let you get some work done. Is it all right if I pick you up about 6:30? Make it 7. I need to wash my hair. Will we need reservations? Shane asked. I made them this morning just in case you should ask me to dinner, Lucy said. Don't forget to pack a toothbrush. When he reached his apartment, Shane discovered his Cuban cleaning woman had been there before him. The bed was made up and everything was in apple pie order. Shane took down a blue flight bag from a closet shelf and, whistling to himself, packed extra shirts, pajamas, a sweater, and toilet articles, not forgetting a toothbrush. For the cruise from Taiwan to San Francisco, he would have to buy additional wardrobe in Taiwan before embarking, but Shane looked forward to bargain prices on that island. Tim Rourke called about the middle of the afternoon. Hey, Mike, he said. I really had to dig to find out about this Seaberg Foundation, so you owe me one now. Shane chuckled. You scratch my back, I'll scratch yours. So what do you have? It was founded in 1950 by Joseph Seaberg, a Swiss citizen. It's rumored he made his fortune by smuggling gold out of Nazi Germany into Switzerland. Also works of art. That last is documented. Recently he's paid a visit to both mainland China and Taiwan. This gets interesting, Shane said when Tim paused. Do we know the purpose of those 2 visits? No, Tim told him. But Joe gets more interesting. He's one of these multi-millionaire sleepers. Nobody really knows a hell of a lot about the man himself. Where is his foundation registered? Shane asked. It isn't, Tim said. My main source says it's a front, but he hasn't any real proof. A front for what? Shane asked. Your guess is as good as anyone's, Mike. The thing is, whatever Joe backs turns him a very neat profit. Sweet charity for charity's sake is something the Seaberg Foundation knows nothing about. Thanks, Tim. Anytime you need a good back scratch, you know where to find me. That's for sure, Tim said. I'll be around, don't worry. Then he dropped the bantering tone. Be careful out there, Mike. You can depend on that, Shane told the reporter. I know better, but maybe you'll tell me who your main source is? You know better, Tim said, and broke the phone connection. Shane went to his bar and poured himself a brandy on the rocks. He sipped it thoughtfully, staring out the window of his apartment. As a member of the International Association of Private Investigators, or AIAI, Shane, given time, could have cabled a Swiss, Antoine Teller, and asked about Seaberg. From time to time, Shane supplied information for other association members in all parts of the Western world. But he had never had occasion to contact Teller, nor had the Swiss ever needed his services. Shane decided whatever scam Joseph Seaberg was up to this time was none of his business. He'd been retained to see the Golden Buddha and the rest of the exhibit from Taiwan to Miami. He did pull a reference book covering China and the Far East from his shelf to learn that the highest peak on the large island off the coast of China was Shan, towering 13,113 feet, and correctly assumed the Shan Buddha came from some ancient temple on the slopes of that mountain. Chilung was Taipei's port, so the Golden Buddha would be shipped out from there. Bathed and shaved, Shane selected a gray suit that had just come from the cleaners and a light blue shirt with a dark blue tie. He also remembered to shine his shoes. Addicted to slacks and sports coats, Shane had only recently begun to style up his wardrobe, gently prodded by Lucy Hamilton. It would be a long time, however, before the rugged redhead would vie for the distinction of the best-dressed man in Miami Beach. When he called for her, Lucy was ready and waiting. She'd donned a smartly tailored pantsuit that exhibited her fine figure to the best advantage and wore a white silk scarf knotted loosely about her throat. It never ceased to amaze Shane how much Lucy changed when one of their nights on the town rolled around. "You're a walking dream," Shane complimented Lucy. "What did you do with your hair?" "Washed it, silly." Lucy's quick smile sparkled. "Shall we go?" 3 pressed duck, Cantonese style, with various candied vegetables and brown rice, accompanied by cups of warm rice wine as well as tea, left both Shane and Lucy in a mellow mood when they'd finished their dinner in the small private dining room shut off from the rest of the restaurant with delicately painted screens. Demure young Chinese girls had served their meal. It had been a leisurely dinner, and Shane had become accustomed to sitting on a mat to eat from the low table. He stretched and sighed. "Now this is living," he told Lucy. "Maybe we should move our office to Taiwan." Lucy laughed. "What's funny?" Shane asked. "I was picturing you in a kimono." "Don't the Japanese men wear those at home?" Shane asked. "I don't know what Chinese men wear." Lucy shrugged her slender shoulders. "You could be right." "What should we do with the rest of the evening?" Shane said. "I just happen to have wine chilling, my stereo stacked with the kind of music we like, and a cold late supper ready to serve," Lucy told him. "But if you have something more exciting in mind—" "Bite your tongue," Shane said. "Your pure and unadulterated excitement with your womanly wiles and ways. Let's get out of here." Lucy sighed. "I thought you'd never ask." Shane grinned. "Like hell you didn't." The next morning, Shane took a taxi to the airport to catch his early flight. "So you're Mr. Shane?" the pretty young woman at the check-in counter said. "It's early to tell," Shane said, "but I think I am." The woman smiled and reached to the cubbyholes behind the desk. "Message for you, Mr. Shane. Tully Franco now charged with murder, one in California," Shane read. "Never mind contacting Francis. Have a good trip and bring me back a geisha girl." The message was from Will Gentry. "Do they have geisha girls on Taiwan?" the uniformed woman behind the counter asked. "Not to the best of my knowledge," Shane told her with a grin. She made a note on his boarding pass. "This gets you aboard armed," the woman told him. "Just don't hijack us, please." Shane's flight was abroad a 747 with its 2 layers of passengers, non-stop to San Francisco. The extra roominess in the first-class section was a relief for Shane after his last tourist flight. Folding his big frame into tourist section seats had been a harrowing experience. When he arrived at Miami International, he complained to Lucy about having high-altitude bends. He silently blessed his secretary for booking him through to Taiwan as a first-class passenger. Shane had only 3 hours between planes when he reached San Francisco International, so he was relieved Will Gentry had changed his mind about questioning Tully Franco in the SFPD's custody. He ate a hearty meal in one of the terminal restaurants to fortify himself for the long hop to Honolulu and on to Taipei. Shane had his boarding pass and was waiting for his flight number to be called when the PA system announced, "Mr. Michael Shane, please report to the Orient West counter." What next? Shane grumbled to himself. He hoped Chief of Police Will Gentry hadn't changed his mind. When Shane had identified himself, the man clerk said, "Mr. Shane, we have a rather extraordinary request." He pointed toward a slender Chinese girl sitting on a bench near the counter. Dark glasses with their wide oval lenses couldn't disguise the fact she was a beautiful young woman. "She is on your flight as another first-class passenger." "Do you have her name?" The clerk glanced at a slip of paper. "Dr. Mary Sue Lin of the University of San Francisco," he said. "She wants you to look after her on the flight. Her destination is the same as yours." Shane looked around at the Chinese girl. She sat as she had before, looking into space, hands folded in her lap. "I don't quite understand this." Shane frowned. "She seems perfectly capable of taking care of herself. If she isn't, flight attendants will be aboard. I have no idea how she got my name or knew I would be taking this flight." "The girl is blind, Mr. Shane." "Oh, well, in that case." The clerk was relieved. "Thank you, Mr. Shane. Have a most pleasant flight." Shane approached the seated Chinese girl. "Hello, Dr. Su Lin. I'm Michael Shane." She turned her face in his direction and held out a slender hand. "Good of you to help me," she said in a soft voice. Shane gently shook her hand. "They are about to call our flight and open the gates." When Mary Sue Lin arose from her bench, Shane discovered the top of her head didn't quite reach his shoulder. She took the arm he offered. "This is good of you, Mr. Shane," she said. "I suppose I could have managed alone, but since we have a common interest, I decided you might not mind being burdened with a sightless person." As they walked, Shane, matching his usually long strides to Mary's short steps, said, "What is it we have in common?" "The Golden Buddha." The long hours ahead crossing the Pacific would be time enough to find out her interest in the Golden Buddha of Xinkaoshan, Shane decided, and concentrated on leading Mary through the crowded air terminal to their boarding gate. Aboard the plane, Shane helped Mary fasten her seatbelt. As the 747 moved out and down the blacktop alley for the head of the runway the pilot would use for takeoff, Mary Sue Lin seemed to shrink in her seat, and Shane noticed that her hands were trembling. "Are you afraid to fly?" he asked. "Always." She managed a stiff smile, but her olive-skinned face was pale. Shane put an arm around the slender Chinese girl's shoulders. "Satchel Paige had something to say about flying," he told her, then decided against quoting Satchel to the frightened girl until they were safely airborne. "Satchel? What an extraordinary name. Who was he?" she asked. "You'd have to be a baseball 10 to remember Satch," Shane told her. "He was a pitcher in the black leagues who finally made the majors at the end of his career." The pilots had been cleared for takeoff. As the huge plane gathered speed, the jet engine whine rose to a banshee scream. "What did he say?" Mary asked. "Tell you when we're in the air," Shane said. The plane's nose tilted and the 747 went into a 45-degree climb, the maze of crisscrossed runways quickly dwindling until San Francisco International looked like some sort of board for a child's game. Finally, the captain announced on the PA that they were at 33,000 feet, doing 500 knots with good weather predicted between the West Coast and Honolulu. Shane helped Mary unbuckle her seatbelt and tuck it away. "Now tell me what it was this Satchel person said about air travel," she insisted, no longer pale and trembling. "Oh?" Shane was wishing she'd forget what he'd started to tell her. "The airlines ain't gonna hurt you," he quoted, "but they may kill you." To his surprise, Mary laughed, and her laughter was as sweet as a tinkling temple bell. "Your Mr. Satchel could have been Chinese with that sort of philosophy," she told him. "Fatalism is our defense against fear, but I'm too Americanized to be a good fatalist." San Francisco's famous skyline rode on a pillow of clouds behind them, a toy city, and the blue Pacific below was dimpled and flecked with tiny crests of white foam. "How do you feel now?" Shane asked the girl. "Much better." She gave him a fleeting smile. "Forgive me for being such a coward. On one condition." "And what is that?" "Tell me two things. Why we have a common interest in the Golden Buddha, and how did you know I was booked on this flight?" A pert stewardess picked that moment to ask, "May I serve you something to drink, Miss Sue Lin and Mr. Shane? Luncheon will be served in half an hour." "What will you have?" Shane asked Mary Sue Lin. "A gimlet, please." "Make mine a double brandy Martell's if you have it aboard," Shane ordered. "Just ice." "I believe we have your brand," the stewardess told Shane, and disappeared into the dim after-reaches of the 747. "The size of these double-deck birds always amazes me," Shane told the girl. "Me too," she said. "It's as if we were a small airborne world." "It's question and answer time," Shane reminded Mary. "Dr. Feldman, when I called him yesterday, referred me to your secretary," she told him. "So that answers your last question first." "You're with the Seeberg Foundation?" The girl frowned slightly. "In an advisory capacity only. My field is Oriental art and philosophy." "My interest in the Xinkaoshan Buddha is to see it reaches Miami safely," Shane said. "But Dr. Feldman must have told you that. Now tell me why you're flying out to Taiwan." Mary laughed. "Don't you enjoy a good puzzle, Mr. Shane?" "I'm Mike to my friends," Shane told her. "Mike it is, then." "I don't like puzzles," Shane said. "Not when I have a job to do." "Perhaps my mission is the same as yours," Mary Sue Lin said in a teasing voice. The stewardess brought their drinks. Mary sipped her gimlet. "Excellent," Shane ignored the martels on the rocks on the small fold-down tray in front of him. "Stop playing the role of an inscrutable Chinese, Mary," he said. "If we're to deal in, perhaps, maybe you're a mainland Chinese agent." Shane said it blandly, but looked for an answer in his companion's expression. Mary sobered. "I hate the communists." "And love the nationalists?" "No, love isn't the right word. Let's say I respect them for standing up against the communist terror and stupidity," she added. Shane finally sipped his drink. "That isn't your brand," Mary said. "How would you know that?" "When you can't see nature compensates by making your hearing, sense of smell and taste more acute than the average person's," she told him. "One of my uncles owns a Chinatown bar in San Francisco. While I went to school, I worked as one of his bartenders so I could pay my readers. I became quite good at distinguishing brands of whiskey by sniffing the corks." "I seem to be learning everything about you except why you're on your way to Taiwan," Shane told the girl. "Do you suppose we could have another drink before lunch?" Mary Sue Lin asked. Shane rang for the stewardess. "Do you know this Dr. Scott?" he asked. "No, Dr. Scott is the reason I'm flying to Taiwan." When the stewardess came, she brought with her their fresh drinks. "Do you read minds?" Shane asked. The stewardess smiled. "It comes with the job. By the way, I haven't served you martels. We're out of that brand." Mary Sue Lin's was a knowing smile. While they sipped their drinks, the Chinese girl explained, "The Shan Golden Buddha is an important national treasure for the Taiwanese. Dr. Scott isn't completely trusted by the nationalist government. They have been in touch with Joseph Seeberg, and he cabled me to assume her responsibilities. That is as much as I know, Mike." "Does Dr. Feldman know about this?" Shane asked. "I don't believe so. Mr. Seeberg can be a very capricious man, and many times his left hand doesn't know what his right is doing." "This leaves me in a rather odd position," Shane said. "I was hired to work with Dr. Scott." "We'll sort things out quickly enough in Taipei," Mary told him. "I'll deal with Dr. Scott." Their layover at Honolulu International was a brief one. There was a short refueling stop at Midway, then a night flight on to Taiwan. Mary Sue Lin, in response to his questions, filled Shane in about the stormy history of the island, once Formosa, 100 miles off the South China coast. The original Formosans, she told him, were a brown-skinned people, probably Malays. The Dutch first conquered the island and held it against the Spanish. "After them, the Japanese?" Shane asked. "No. Koxinga or Cheng Kung drove out the Dutch and brought Chinese to Taiwan. It was a refuge back then in 1662 from the Manchu rulers of China. From the island Cheng, like Chiang Kai-shek, tried to drive the Manchus from the Chinese mainland. In 1682, the Manchus seized the island, and then the Chinese migration increased." "What happened to the original Taiwanese?" Shane asked. "As the saying goes, they took to the hills," Mary Sue Lin told him. 3/4 of the island is mountains, you know. On the east, they drop a sheer 6,000 feet into the sea. The western coastal plain is about 20 miles wide and 90 long. That is where the Chinese live and farm. The Japanese had the island ceded to them in 1904 after the Sino-Japanese War, and, as you probably know, held it until 1945 when it was returned to China. She went on to mention that the native Formosans in their mountain strongholds were headhunters until shortly before World War II. Should history repeat itself, as it has a way of doing, Mary Sue Lin told Shane, we can expect the communists, like the Manchus, to make an all-out effort in the not-too-distant future to invade Taiwan, especially since the nationalists can no longer be certain of United States support. Flying into the dawn, Shane first saw the towering mountain spine of the island. As the plane closed the distance, the cliffs Mary Sue Lin had mentioned came in sight. Minutes later, they landed at the Taipei Air Terminal. An official of the government, a young Chinese in a business suit, was waiting for them at customs. He introduced himself as Chung Li and shook Shane's hand, then bowed to Mary Sue Lin. "Please be welcome to free China," Chung Li said in unaccented English. "I have the honor of being your friend and guide while you are our guests here on Taiwan." "Then you can guide us to the International Hotel," Shane told him. "We're to meet Dr. Scott there." Chung Li frowned, gave his round face a pained expression. "Dr. Scott today is in Kaohsiung, our other port city. he said. She is making final shipping arrangements for the Golden Buddha there. She is sorry not to honor your arrival with her presence. Did you say she? Shane asked. Dr. Scott is a woman? Chung Li nodded. A most beautiful woman in Western eyes. I'm sure you will agree. Mary Sue Lin asked. You mean Dr. Feldman didn't tell you? No, he didn't. In my rush to get away, we spoke on the phone for only a few minutes. It's Dr. Stephanie Scott, Mary Sue Lin told Shane. You might remember that she was a rather prominent campus activist in the 1960s. She's a graduate of the University of California at Berkeley. Shane shook his head. There were too many to remember them all. Please come, Chung Li said. A car's waiting. Shane, with Mary Sue Lin's arm tucked under his elbow, followed the Chinese through the crowded terminal to a side door. Two husky Chinese with shaved heads, in chauffeur's livery, took their baggage and loaded it into the trunk of the black Mercedes. Shane noticed both men were armed, but, in a foreign country, thought nothing of it. The jammed city streets fascinated Shane. It wasn't the sort of first glimpse at an Oriental city he expected. With its gleaming high-rise buildings and smart shops, Taipei could have been any other new Western city if it weren't for the signs in incomprehensible Chinese. He became so much a tourist, as a matter of fact, that he didn't notice the Mercedes was moving through thinner traffic as it neared the edge of the city. Is this your first visit to our island? Chung Li asked Shane. As a matter of fact, it is, Shane told him. Mary Sue Lin touched his arm. The International Hotel didn't used to be this far from the air terminal, Mike. The car was spinning along a wide road that skirted the mountains, and rice paddies stretched away on either side of them. Where are you taking us? Shane asked their guide. Chung Li smiled. You and Dr. Sue Lin are honored guests of the Red Brigade, Mr. Shane. He extended his hand. You will please give me the weapon you are carrying. Shane considered the odds. The chauffeur not driving had an arm hooked over the back of the front seat and a machine pistol in his other hand. Your weapon, please, Chung Li said. IV. What is happening? Mary Sue Lin asked Shane. We've been suckered and shafted, he told her in an even voice that had a bite. Carefully removing his Colt .45 from the shoulder holster, he passed the weapon to Chung Li. This is one hell of a welcome to Taiwan. What sort of game are you and the goons up front playing? It was the Manchus who stole the Xinkaoshan Golden Buddha from the people of China, Chung Li told him. The Red Brigade will return it to its rightful owners, the People's Republic of China. Unless the nationalists do this, and promptly, you and Dr. Sue Lin will be executed. Mary Sue Lin's hand found Shane's, but she said in a cool voice, Your grasp of Chinese history, Mr. Chung, leaves something to be desired. You, a woman, choose to enlighten me? Chung asked in a sarcastic voice. Someone should, Mary Sue Lin told him. I know more than you do about Oriental objects of art. It was Cheng Cheng Kung who commissioned the Golden Buddha to honor his favorite wife who was Buddhist. That was here on Taiwan in 1664, and when the Manchus invaded the island, it was hidden in a mountain cave. Later, the shrine on Xinkaoshan was rebuilt, and the Golden Buddha restored to his rightful place, only to be hidden again during the Japanese occupation. Your Red Brigade should try to keep their facts straight, Mr. Chung. Does that straighten you out? Shane asked Chung. Chairman Mao, if he was still alive, would be ashamed of your ignorance. Chung Li's mouth was a straight line, and anger glinted in his eyes, but he said, No matter. Whatever is Chinese belongs to the Chinese people who followed Chairman Mao instead of that traitor Chiang Kai-shek. Communist rhetoric isn't easy to understand, Mike. It was Mary Sue Lin's turn to be sarcastic. To put it simply, what belongs to them is theirs, and what belongs to you is also theirs. The black Mercedes was laboring up a steep slope in the mountain road, vertical cliffs on either side. At each sharp curve, the car's tires spit gravel over the sheer drop on their right. They were climbing so fast, Shane fished a stalk of gum from his pocket to ease the popping of his eardrums. Where does Dr. Stephanie Scott fit into this clever little plot of yours, Chung? Shane asked the Chinese. Is this kidnapping for Ramsin our bright idea, or did you think it up all by yourself? Chung Li stared straight ahead, lips pursed, and refused to answer Shane's question. Uncle Sam isn't going to take to this kindly, Shane went on. At this juncture in their international relationships, trying to cozy up to the decadent capitalists of USA. I doubt your mainland friends will pat you on the back and strike a medal either. Running dog imperialists. Chung Li spat at the pair. Shane grinned. Flattery is going to get you nowhere, friend. They were finally coming to the end of the narrow mountain road. Shane estimated from his shortness of breath that they must be at least 9,000 feet. They could see through misty clouds to the western ocean cliffs and the eastern lowlands checkerboarded with small fields and what looked like toy houses. The air was clean and crisp. Beyond the end of the road, on a mountainside plateau, was a rustic lodge built of bamboo. The mountain retreat, Shane speculated, of some minor government official anxious to escape the humid lowland part of the island during the monsoon season. On the porch were another pair of shaven-head Chinese, or perhaps Mongols, Shane thought. Like the two stolid chauffeurs, they were armed with machine pistols. They stood more or less at attention as Shane and Mary Sue Lin followed Chung Li out of the back seat of the bulk Mercedes. The two chauffeurs got out of the car too, and Chung Li slid under the wheel. You will be guarded by these men until the Golden Buddha is on its way to Canton, Chung Li told Shane and Mary Sue Lin. I would not advise any attempt to escape from them. Their orders are to shoot to kill under such a circumstance. Shane stretched and yawned. Wouldn't think of such a stupid move at Chung, he said. We rather like it here with your thugs. Do any of you Cretans speak English? Chung Li's was a mocking smile. Of course not. They know better than to accept any sort of bribe anyway, so save your breath. Red Brigade discipline is very strict. I'm sure it must be, Shane said. By the way, how are you going to negotiate for the Golden Buddha? Chung Li couldn't resist a smug smile. It is with me the Red Brigade will barter, he boasted. This sort of thing comes within the jurisdiction of my department. Just say your prayers that my immediate superiors will strike a swift bargain. Shane shook his head sadly. A traitor in high places. A patriot, Chung Li insisted with some heat. Shane had found out what he needed to know. The Red Brigade had no plans to set either himself or Mary Sue Lin free. Chung Li would never risk being exposed as an agent of Red China. This information the Chinese had given so carelessly narrowed Shane's options. He would have to figure some way to escape their captors, and quickly, then manage to get down the rugged mountain and back to Taipei. The blind girl would be a burden when they got free, and Shane didn't consider if they managed to elude the 4 guards, but she was game. If he had to, Shane would carry her down the rugged slopes piggyback. Shane set a 48-hour deadline for them to make their escape. He had a strong hunch Chung Li wouldn't dare keep them alive any longer than that. It would be too risky. I suppose this is your place, Shane said, gesturing at the mountain lodge. Chung Li nodded. My duties are rigorous. I need somewhere I can relax. Shifting gears, Chung Li drove away, and one of the guards gestured Shane and Mary Sue Lin to enter the bamboo lodge. Shane smiled at the man. You're a yellow-skinned son of a bitch, he told the guard in a pleasant voice, which doesn't reflect much credit on the maternal side of your family tree. The man blinked, but the expression on his sullen face didn't change. The other 3 guards showed no indication that they understood English either. Would you say they don't understand what I just said? Shane asked Mary Sue Lin. I'd have to see their faces to be sure, she told him. But insulting that man's ancestral mother should have earned you a cracked head. The 4 men were talking among themselves, so Shane asked, Do you understand them? They speak a Mongol dialect, she told him. I can only catch a familiar word here and there. I'd say they come from the Gobi Desert of Outer or Inner Mongolia. That's great, Shane said. Cousins of Genghis Khan. Shane and Mary Sue Lin were on the porch of the lodge. One of the guards opened the door for them. Inside, they found themselves in a room that ran across the front of the small bamboo building. It was sparsely but tastefully furnished. At one end were sleeping mats for the guard, and stacked against the wall were AK-47s with clips of ammunition. There was a brazier set up on the floor where the guards cooked their meals. The stolid guards herded Shane and Mary Sue Lin down a narrow hall to a room at the back of the lodge. As soon as they'd stepped inside the room, the door behind them was bolted. Hello? The calm, husky voice belonged to the woman sitting in a dark corner. hugging her knees. Nice to finally have some company. I was getting lonely. Mary Sue Lin's head swiveled in the direction of the voice, as Shane's eyes adjusted to the darkness. After bright sunshine outside, he discovered the owner of the voice had honey gold hair, and as she rose, a ripe, shapely body. "Who the devil are you?" Shane asked in a blunt voice. "Dr. Stephanie Scott." With a blink, Shane absorbed this information. "Meet Dr. Mary Sue Lin of the University of San Francisco," he said, nodding toward the Chinese girl. "I'm Mike Shane," Dr. Stephanie Scott finished for him. "If he fooled you two, I don't feel too badly about falling into Chung Li's trap. Clever people, these Chinese. Begging your pardon, Dr. Sue Lin." "If no offense given, none is taken," Mary Sue Lin said. "You two fell for his plot with your eyes open. In my case, the seeing led the unsighted to garble a biblical passage." Shane detected a sharp edge to the Chinese girl's voice he hadn't heard before. "You're blind?" Dr. Stephanie Scott asked. "Unsighted," Mary Sue Lin corrected. "We like that term for our handicap better." The small room was Spartan, with only sleeping mats and in a far corner, screened sanitary facilities. There was a single window. Shane prowled to it and tugged at the cord that raised the bamboo blind. It was glazed with oiled paper. Shane slid the window open. The lodge was poised on the brink of a steep cliff and provided a breathtaking panorama of the Taiwan mountain spine with its snowy peaks. The lodge was only a foot or two from the edge of the precipice. Shane could see down into a deep rocky valley, more than 2,000 feet below. Dr. Stephanie Scott joined Shane at the window, and her shoulder rubbed his. "That one is Shinkao Shan," she told Shane, pointing to a peak glistening with white snow in the middle distance. "A sacred mountain to the ignorant and superstitious Buddhists. From it they believe one can commune with the Lord Buddha, wherever he may be these days." Shane craned his neck from the window to study the precipice on which they were poised. An expert mountaineer, he decided, could probably go down that cliff, given the proper equipment. With a woman and a girl and no equipment, it was an impossible task. And if it was possible, the guards could easily pick them off as they tried to make the descent. So that avenue of escape was closed. Shane moved away from Dr. Stephanie Scott. Mary Sue Lin had calmly seated herself on one of the sleeping mats, naturally assuming the lotus position. "Penny for your thoughts, Michael Shane," the woman said. "Chung Li doesn't plan for us to leave this place alive," Shane told her. "My thoughts start with that premise. He'll keep us among the living until, and if, he can strike some sort of deal. But after that," Shane said with a grim smile, "we become very poor life insurance risks." Dr. Stephanie Scott extended a slender hand. "Nice to meet another pragmatist," she said, her blue eyes studying Shane's craggy face. "What do you suggest we should do? Prayer to an almighty but unseen God isn't exactly one of my fortes." "There's only one thing to do," Shane said. "And what would that be?" "Break out of here and get back down the mountain to Taipei." "What else?" "So we can blow the whistle on Mr. Chung Li, honorable gentleman that he is," Dr. Stephanie Scott said in a sarcastic voice. "You've come halfway around the world at some expense to Dr. Feldman's department to state the obvious. Congratulations, Mike Shane. But I wish Feldman had sent a contingent of U.S. Marines instead." Shane ignored the woman's sarcasm. "Chung Li has my Colt .45, he said. "Did he happen to leave you any sort of weapon?" Dr. Stephanie Scott was wearing a rather tight slit skirt in the Chinese fashion with a loose silk blouse. She turned her back and raised the blouse. Tucked into the top of the skirt was a dagger. The handle nestled in the small of Dr. Stephanie Scott's back, and Shane mentally complimented her on knowing the best way to conceal a weapon, but at the same time wondered where she had learned. When he reached to draw the dagger from its soft leather sheath, his fingers brushed the woman's warm skin, and she shuddered slightly. Shane found himself looking at a needle-sharp, double-edged dagger. He carefully returned it to its sheath, and Dr. Stephanie Scott let her loose blouse tail fall back in place. "Why did they leave you with that?" Shane asked. "3 of our Mongol friends plan to conduct a most complete body search," she told him with a slight flush. "The 4th saved me from being stripped and raped." He repeated the name Chung Li several times during his tirade, So I assume my eventual ravishment will be carried out by that son of a bitch. Before he kills me. Shane was thoughtful. When will we be brought something to eat? He asked the woman. Like an animal in a zoo, I'm fed boiled fish and rice once a day in the evening. The priggish Mongol I've mentioned seems to be the chief cook and bottle washer around this lovely mountain retreat. At any rate, he serves my food. I'd assume they won't vary the routine for 2 additional guests. Why do you ask? You getting hungry? I hope you like fish and rice. I don't. For Mike to get us out of this mess, he needs to know the routine they follow, Mary Sue Lin told the woman. Dr. Stephanie Scott raised an eyebrow. Is Miss Know-It-All your mistress, Shane? I am not, Mary Sue Lin said hotly. I came along with Mike as a watchdog for the Seaberg Foundation. It seems Joseph Seaberg doesn't trust you. Well, now that's nice. What we don't need is for you two to get into a hair-pulling contest, Shane said in a crisp voice. So knock it off. Dr. Stephanie Scott took a deep breath. So all right, you've made your point, Shane. I hope so. We hang together or be hanged separately, as the cliché goes. What happens while you're eating, Stephanie? When Shane used her first name, it seemed to touch a chord that dissolved the woman's brash manner. She'd used it to cover the squirming worms of naked fear assailing her. They leave the door open. Stephanie's voice dropped to its normal husky register. When I've finished eating, the cook, or whatever he is, comes back to make sure I haven't eaten the plate and chopsticks too. God knows I stay hungry enough to do that if I could. What are you given to drink? Shane asked. I've noticed we're not left any water. Green tea and that's all. Water up here is either bad or scarce. It's bitter stuff served in a glass. Bitter? Mary Sue Lin asked. Yes, very. Green tea shouldn't be, Mary Sue Lin told Stephanie. Not if it's made properly. Or drugged, Shane said. Stephanie's eyes widened. Why didn't I think of that? I've been sleeping like a baby since they brought me up here. Usually I have to take a pill. Drugging the victim is SOP with kidnappers, Shane told the woman and the girl. Where's the guard while you eat with the door to this room open? Out in the hallway. All right, Shane said. Here's the way we make a break this evening. Very well and good, Stephanie said when Shane had laid out their course of action. But what then? We're stranded on a mountain somewhere in Taiwan. What do we do, hitchhike? She nodded to where Mary Sue Lin was sitting quietly. And what about her? What about me? Mary Sue Lin spoke up. You're blind. It's going to be hard enough for Shane and me to scramble off this mountain without having to play seeing eye dogs to you. Before Mary Sue Lin could speak, Shane said, Just knock it off on both of you. He turned to Stephanie. Let me have that dagger. Without a word, she handed it, in its soft leather sheath, to him. Shane raised the left leg of his pants and tucked the sheathed dagger into his sock, but not without first testing its edge with his thumb. Where in the world did you get the dagger? He asked Stephanie. I found it in a shop in Taipei when I first came to the island, she said. I bought it for a friend back in the States who collects weapons, but decided I'd better carry it until you came. Why? My hotel room was rifled twice shortly after I arrived, Stephanie explained, and there have been some other suspicious things happening. Such as? I've been followed wherever I go. That's why I asked Dr. Feldman to send someone like you out here. Where is the Golden Buddha now? Shane asked. Aboard a ship named the Oriental Trader with the rest of the exhibit. It's docked at Kaohsiung on the southern end of the island instead of Taipei's port, Qilong. I checked out of my hotel to stay aboard ship until you arrived. I thought I'd be safer there. How did Chung Li grab you? Shane wanted to know. He offered to drive me down to Kaohsiung, Stephanie said. Instead, I wound up here. Did you leave a message for me at your hotel? Shane asked. Stephanie made a wry face. Our dear Chinese friend said he'd take care of that. Chung Li's plotting was clever, Shane realized. The American consul on Taiwan would have no reason to believe anything was wrong and institute a search for them. The ship now in Kaohsiung, if the nationalists took Chung Li's bait, would be on the high seas for a southern mainland port before Americans on Taiwan knew 3 of their citizens were missing. And he suspected Mary Sue Lin, Stephanie Scott, and Mike Shane, when they didn't appear, would be implicated by Chung Li in the plot. Shane was certain the man was clever enough and had the connections to cover himself in that way. The sun was down and darkness was coming quickly. The aroma of cooking fish and rice had invaded the room where they were held captive half an hour ago. Shane had rehearsed both Mary Sue Lin and Stephanie Scott in the roles they were to play. "Don't spare your lungs," he'd warned the woman. "Not to worry," she'd told him. Shane stood at parade rest facing the bolted door. Stephanie was by the window, ostensibly admiring the view. Mary Sue Lin was behind the corner screen that hid the sanitary facilities. The dagger was clasped in Shane's right hand behind his back. The bolt on the outside of the door was shot by a guard with a machine pistol dangling from a strap over his shoulder. Shane heard the footsteps of the man bringing their food. He would have his hands full. When that guard was framed in the doorway, Shane stepped aside, ostensibly to let him pass. Unsuspecting, the Mongol stepped into the room. Shane brought his left fist around in a sharp arc, catching the guard carrying their food on the nape of his neck. As the man went down, Stephanie let out a piercing shriek. It was enough to confuse the guard in the hallway, fumbling for the machine pistol he was carrying. Shane had that weapon, slashed it loose with the knife, then drove the dagger into the Mongol's throat, jerked it free as blood spurted, stabbed him a second time just below his ribcage to pierce the heart. The guard he'd struck was on his hands and knees. The running feet of the other two guards shook the lodge floor as Shane kicked the kneeling man over on his back and drove a foot into his exposed throat. The other two were pounding toward the room from the front of the lodge. "Out!" Shane ordered Stephanie. She scrambled through the window to crouch on the narrow ledge overlooking the cliff. She screamed again. Shane had the machine pistol cocked and ready. The first guard to arrive stumbled over the body in the hallway, slipped in the pool of blood widening around it. A burst from Shane's weapon slammed him back against the opposite wall. His machine pistol clattered to the floor as he crumpled at the knees, then pitched headlong into the doorway of the room. Shane stood back and stitched the thin hall partition, hoping a lucky shot would down their fourth captor now that he'd lost the element of surprise. He heard the Mongol yelp with surprise, then the sound of his pounding feet as he retreated toward the front of the lodge. "Damn it!" The machine pistol in his hand was empty. Dropping it, he went after the weapon of the man he'd dropped in the doorway. "Back in," he ordered Stephanie. "The shooting is over here." She came squimming through the window to stare at the three Mongols Shane had just killed. She paled, and a hand jumped to her throat. "You play for keeps, Shane," Stephanie said. Mary Sue Lin had ventured forth from behind the corner screen, hands held out in front of her. The room reeked with the smell of cordite and freshly spilled blood. The girl bent over, retching. Shane pushed Stephanie toward her. "Keep her down flat and you stay on the floor too," he ordered. "These flimsy partitions wouldn't stop a BB pellet." "What are you going to do?" Stephanie asked. "Stock number 4, what else?" Shane said, and in 2 quick strides was at the window. "You two stay low and quiet, understand?" It was a close fit, but Shane squeezed out the window onto the narrow ledge. Back to the house wall, in the quickly gathering dusk, he sidestepped toward the back corner of the house, reasoning the surviving guard would circle around and come in that way. As Shane sidled along, stones dropped off into space, and once he almost slipped. Somehow, he managed to keep his balance without dropping the machine pistol in his sweaty hand. There was a cold bite to the evening breeze at that altitude, but Shane's shirt was soaked with sweat. He was thankful the sheer drop in front of him was to a valley floor already flooded with inky darkness. Shane paused when he reached the corner, holding his breath and listening. The sound he was waiting for, when it came, was behind him, at the front of the house. It was the distinctive snick of another machine pistol being cocked. Shane swung himself around the corner, a split second before the space he's occupied was shredded with the scream of bullets. Turning the corner, he dropped his weapon. It lay out on the edge of the precipice. If he reached for it, a burst of fire could cut off his arm. Now sweat was blinding him. Shane wiped his eyes with his forearm, and the pounding of his heart was like a drum in his ears. "Don't panic now," he told himself, taking a deep breath. The guard he hoped would expect him to come around the house. Shane waited in the gathering darkness. Finally, he made his move. It was to reach for the fallen machine pistol. There was no burst of fire. Tucking it in his belt, Shane started sidling back along the ledge, having removed his shoes. As he approached the front corner of the lodge, he eased the pistol from his belt and made sure the safety was in the off position. It was already cocked. Shane made it to the corner and jumped out into the open, fully expecting to be fired at by his waiting antagonist. He was just in time to see the Mongol making a stealthy approach to the far corner of the house. "Back here," he shouted. As the man spun around, Shane nearly cut him in half. Pausing, Shane sucked in deep breaths of the cold mountain air, waiting for his heart and pulse to slow. Then he entered the lodge to face Mary Sue Lin and Stephanie. The woman and the girl were backed into a corner of the room, huddled against each other, Stephanie's arm around Mary Sue Lin's slender shoulders. "It's finished here." Shane answered the question in Stephanie's eyes. It was dark now, so Shane lit the oil lamp in the room. He lit a cigarette from the same match and inhaled deeply. "We'd be damned foolish to blunder around this mountain in the dark. Why don't you two move up to the front room while I do something about—" Shane indicated the three bodies with his hand. "You might try to rustle up something for us to eat." When they were gone, he used one of the sleeping mats to roll each body for carrying. There was no shovel, and the soil was rocky. For quick disposal, he threw the bodies over the cliff, then walked around the house to do the same with the last Mongol guard he'd dropped. It was grisly work, and twice Shane had the dry heaves before he finished. He'd found and jammed a fresh clip into the machine pistol tucked under his belt. Shane didn't intend to be surprised by the return of Chung Li. The moon was high. There was a narrow path leading away from the lodge toward the sound of rippling water. He went up on the porch and thrust his head in the doorway. "Get me a bucket," he called. Mary Sue Lin was fanning the charcoal fire under the brazier on which their fish and rice would be cooked. Stephanie found one somewhere and brought it to Shane. "Back in a minute," Shane told her. A short distance down the path, Shane found himself in a sort of grotto that sheltered a deep spring and the stream flowing from it. When he'd drawn a bucket of water, he stripped and forced himself into the bubbling, ice-cold water. Jumping out, he shivered until his big, scarred body was partially dry, then pulled on his slacks and shirt. His teeth were still chattering, but it felt good to be clean. As best he could, Shane inspected his shirt and pants for bloodstains. It seemed as if there were a few, as careful as he'd tried to be. What he'd done had to be done, with 3 lives at stake. Too often, killing became part of his job. Taking a human life was something he could never quite accept as routine. What had happened here, Shane knew, wouldn't stay buried in his subconscious. There would be dreams, sometimes nightmares. But that, too, came with the territory. Shane's mind was already worrying about the problem of what to do next. He forgot the bloodstains on his clothing. When Shane returned to the lodge, Mary Sue Lin had prepared broiled fish, instead of boiled, to be served on mounds of brown rice carefully fried. Stephanie had made tea. The 3 of them settled down to a feast. It was a quiet meal. No one had anything to say because the girl and woman were drained by the experience they'd just been through. Shane was busy figuring their next move. "I see it this way," he said when they'd finished eating. "There's no telephone, no radio, so Chung Li has to come back either tomorrow or the next day. When he does, he'll bring us wheels." "What do we do about him?" Mary Sue Lin wanted to know. "We'll let the American consul earn his pay trying to figure that out," Shane told her. "We need to get aboard the Oriental Trader and out to sea as soon as possible. Chung Li didn't try this caper alone." "The nationalists lead a nervous political life," Stephanie told Shane and Mary Sue Lin. "They're paranoid about infiltration into Taiwan's bureaucratic infrastructure by communist agents. And I'd guess they should be." "What of the men you had to kill?" Mary Sue Lin asked Shane. "When their bodies are found," Shane said, "with any kind of luck, we should be back in the States." "God willing," Stephanie breathed. "Amen," Mary Sue Lin murmured. "You two try to get some sleep while I wait up for our friend Chung Li," Shane told the woman and girl. "I doubt he'll try to come up this mountain road in the dark, but I want to be bright and bushy-tailed just in case he does." "Is there any tea left?" he asked Stephanie. "A little. You sleep," she told Mary Sue Lin. "I'll keep Shane company." "I'm sure Mike will be very grateful," the Chinese girl said in a sarcastic voice. 5i. It was 3 o'clock in the morning, and Shane was alone on the porch of the mountain lodge with the machine pistol across his knees. From where he sat, He could see the narrow mountain road that wound down the steep slope. The headlights of any automobile negotiating that road would be visible a mile away. Shane was smiling to himself, because Stephanie had given up trying to come on to him half an hour ago and bedded down with Mary Sue Lynn. Damn it all, Shane, Stephanie had finally exploded. I'd rather be sitting up with a cigar store Indian than you. Why don't you get some sleep then? Shane asked. We've had a busy day here and tomorrow may be just as busy. I'm not used to being sent off to bed alone, Stephanie sulked. Shane gave her bottom a sharp pat. Have sweet dreams. You're impossible, Stephanie said. That's because I try harder, he told her. Stephanie had flounced into the lodge. There were no familiar night sounds this high on the mountain. No birds rustled on their perches. If there were crickets, they were silent. The only sounds were the low whistle of the night wind and the just distinguishable murmur of the spring and creek. It was a moonless night with unblinking stars punched out of the dark sky canopy. Shane's thoughts wandered back to Miami Beach and Lucy Hamilton, Will Gentry and Tim Rourke. He wondered whether it was day or night there, yesterday or tomorrow. Far down the road he saw two tiny spots of light. They disappeared, appeared again, were gone, then resolved themselves when he saw them once more into automobile headlights. Shane was on his feet. Was it Chung Lee, and if so, would he be coming up the mountain alone? Shane moved from the porch to the turnaround in front of the lodge. Crouched on his heels, he watched the car coming closer. It was coming up the final grade in low gear. Shane moved back to the edge of the turnaround where the headlights wouldn't catch him in their glare. With a final surge, the black Mercedes made it onto the gravel turnaround and stopped, the headlights bathing the empty porch in front of the lodge. The driver stayed in the automobile, evidently puzzled by the absence of the guards, at least one of whom should have come out to meet him. Shane silently approached the car at an angle and from behind, careful that his image wouldn't be caught in the rearview mirrors. There was only the driver in the Mercedes. The headlights were turned off. Just keep both hands on the wheel, Shane ordered in a low voice, pressing the machine pistol's cold muzzle to the driver's right ear. There was a startled gasp. Now get out from behind the wheel, Shane told him, but keep your hands in sight. I have a very itchy trigger finger. The driver did as he was told, drawing quick breaths but moving deliberately, while Shane pressed the machine pistol muzzle against his spine between the shoulder blades. Hands on top of your head now, Shane snapped. No wrong moves. The man obeyed and stood quietly while Shane frisked him to find his own .45 Colt carried in its underarm rig. Shane was glad to have the familiar heft of his weapon back in his hands and tucked the machine pistol in his belt. Can I turn around now, Governor? The driver asked with a plaintive British accent. Shane had been so certain it was Chung Lee who'd driven the Mercedes up the mountain that he nearly dropped his .45. Just who the hell are you? Shane wanted to know. He found himself facing a slight man with pleasant, snub-nosed features and a blonde mustache. What's happened to Chung Lee? Donald Forbes Robertson is my name, or I guess you Americans would call it my moniker. The Englishman eyed the weapon Shane still leveled at him. Do you mind very much, old boy? He asked. Firearms pointed in my direction make me nervous and always have. Let me have the shoulder rig, Shane said. Of course. I'll have to slip out of this coat, you know. Go ahead. When Shane was adjusting the straps to his larger frame with the .45 nestled in its worn holster, Forbes Robertson said, Chung Lee, I'm afraid, has been a very naughty boy. By the way, I'm British intelligence on loan to the nationalists here on Taiwan. I've had a weather eye on friend Chung for quite some time. This latest little ploy of his brought things to a head, as you Americans would say. Where is he now? Shane asked. Unfortunately, he's flown the coop, as you Americans would say, Shane finished for Forbes Robertson. How did he manage to do that? Hopped aboard a junk as Forbes Robertson's quick grin was engaging. I rather like the way you Americans express yourselves, as you may have gathered. He lit a cigarette with a gold lighter. That heathen Chinese must be half the distance to the mainland by this time. We do have a few failures in British intel, although I must say our track record is much better than your CIA. That Bay of Pigs fiasco, for example. For the moment, Shane was satisfied that Forbes Robertson was who he said he was, and he could ask later how he just happened to have the Colt .45 Chung Lee had relieved him of, as well as the black Mercedes, and why he'd come alone to the lodge when he must have known they would be well guarded. "Where are the birds?" Forbes Robertson asked. "Sleeping," Shane said. "The guards." Shane pointed to the lip of the precipice on which the lodge perched and the dark valley below. Forbes Robertson whistled softly. "Good show. We'll talk later about how you managed that, Yank. Now let's whistle up the birds and be on our way to Kaohsiung. I'm sure all three of you are ready for a sea change." "You can say that again," Shane sighed. "You driving us there?" Forbes Robertson shrugged. "It's the least I can do, old boy. The nationalist intel apparatus wants a low profile for Chung's attempted coup. They have enough on their plate since you Americans pulled out of their corner. Rather alarming that, if you're a nationalist Chinese. My orders are to get you and the birds aboard ship as soon as possible. Do you mind?" Before Shane could answer that question, Stephanie joined them in the cool morning darkness. "Who the devil is this?" she asked Shane. "Forbes Robertson is the name he's given me," Shane answered. Stephanie brushed blonde hair away from her face to peer at the slight Englishman. "Haven't we met somewhere?" she asked. Forbes Robertson grinned. "That we have, dear. At the cocktail party Chung Lee threw when you first arrived here in Taiwan." "Oh, yes," Stephanie said in a flat voice. "You were drunk and almost fell into the punch bowl." Forbes Robertson winced. "I've been telling Shane here that Chung Lee is... How do your American gangsters put it? On the lam?" Shane said. "That's it? Why are you here?" Stephanie asked bluntly. Forbes Robertson told her what he'd just told Shane. By that time, Mary Sue Lin had joined them. She took Shane's arm. Drawing him apart, she whispered, "I don't like this." Shane considered, then asked, "Any specific reason, Mary?" "Not yet." She hesitated. "Call it my feminine intuition." What Mary Sue Lin had just said triggered a faint alarm bell at the back of Shane's mind and reminded him of his own questions about Forbes Robertson. But it was too soon to panic. "We'll play along," he told the Chinese girl in a sotto voice. "Trust me." "I do, Mike," she said. It was the middle of the morning before they reached the dock in Kaohsiung Harbor where the Oriental trader was moored. The rust-streaked freighter with a slight list to port was Liberian registry, Shane noticed, but flew the nationalist flag. It had been a strange trip the length of the island down the flat East Coast plain. There was a main highway, but Forbes Robertson used back roads. "Nationalist security forces have their wind-up," he explained to Shane, who rode beside him on the front seat of the black sedan. "So? Have you ever tried to talk your way through a Chinese roadblock?" Forbes Robertson asked. "It can be sticky." On the dock, Forbes Robertson parked the Mercedes out of sight behind a warehouse. He accompanied Shane, Mary Sue Lin, and Stephanie Scott aboard the ship. No sooner were they aboard than deckhands began to unmoor the tramp steamer, pulling aboard the gangplank. "Do you swim ashore?" Shane asked the Englishman. "Didn't I mention that I'm coming along with the three of you?" "You sure as hell didn't," Shane said. The ship was chugging toward the harbor entrance. "A last-minute decision, old boy," the Englishman said. "You and the birds have staterooms aft." Forbes Robertson beckoned to a deckhand standing nearby and spoke to him in Chinese, then turned back to the trio. "The coolie will show you to your quarters, old man. You and Dr. Sue Lin." They were finally at sea, and the ship paused to drop the pilot down a rope ladder to the bobbing pilot's boat that had followed in their wake from Kaohsiung Harbor. The South China Sea rose and fell in oily swells. "I need a word with our captain," Forbes Robertson told Shane and Mary Sue Lin. "You'd like to make sure our golden Buda is still aboard," he said to Stephanie Scott. "We'll have a look-see, as you Americans put it." Shane watched the pair move forward toward the bridge superstructure, speaking to each other as they went. "I get the feeling those two know each other better than they've said," he told Mary Sue Lin. Word reached Joseph Seeberg in Switzerland that Dr. Scott was on intimate terms with a person on Taiwan involved in art thefts. The Chinese girl told him. "That was why I was sent out here." The coolie seaman, grinning, waited to show them aft to the staterooms. "Did you catch anything of what our English friend said in Chinese?" Shane asked Mary Sue Lin. "Just a little," she answered. It was in Cantonese dialect, and I only speak Mandarin fluently, but I believe he instructed the coolie to lock us into one of the staterooms. We'll see about that, Shane said. They followed the Chinese into a narrow and drafty passageway, leading toward the stern of the freighter. Mary Sue Lin guided herself by placing a hand on Shane's arm. It was becoming obvious to Shane that Forbes Robertson wasn't who he said he was. He was also now convinced that the Englishman and Stephanie Scott not only knew each other well, but were planning to double-cross Mary Sue Lin and himself. But what sort of game they were playing, he couldn't be sure. Mary Sue Lin's temporary safety, however, must be his immediate concern. The seaman, still grinning, opened the steel door to the left-hand stateroom. It was sparsely furnished with a single porthole in the hull of the ship. There was no deck outside, but the double bunks were made up. There was a washstand, a toilet, and the stateroom, unlike the rest of the rusty tramp steamer, was relatively clean. The steel door, he noticed, had a new bolt affixed so it could only be locked from the passageway. Shane took Mary Sue Lin's elbow and guided her over the threshold, but stayed in the passageway himself. He gave her a brief hug and whispered, "I've work to do, honey. But you'll be safe here." She nodded, understanding. The stocky seaman's grin faded to a frown. Shane swung around to face him. "Do you understand any English?" The man shook his head, obviously undecided what to do. Shane closed and bolted the stateroom door, then asked, "Pigeon?" "Me catch small pigeon." During the Korean War, Shane had picked up small pigeon himself on the Pusan docks. He opened the door of the opposite stateroom and waved the seaman to step inside. "You good fellow? No wanna be kill." Shane's Colt was in his hand. "Other fellow tell you lie." The seaman's dark eyes focused on the weapon in Shane's hand, then widened with fright. Shane's free hand on his chest gently pushed him deeper into the stateroom. "By and by, you fellow stay here," he said. Reaching into his pocket, he pressed a handful of silver into the seaman's hand. Tenting his hands against his cheek, Shane said, "You fellow sleep?" The seaman bobbed his head, his grin back. Shane closed the stateroom door and heard the Chinese seaman bolt it from the inside. He moved forward in the passageway until he stepped out on the amidships deck. From the position of the sun, Shane realized they were now on a western course toward the Chinese mainland. Other Chinese crewmen were about their business securing the ship now it was at sea, and paid no attention to him as he prowled toward the bridge, certain he would find Forbes Robertson and Stephanie up there, as well as the ship's captain. Shane climbed the outside ladder to the starboard flying bridge and found that he had been correct. Forbes Robertson and Stephanie Scott had their backs to him and were holding a rapt conversation. As Shane stepped through the open doorway, the pair spun around to face him. Consternation printed on Stephanie's face, a startled look on Forbes Robertson's. "Shane, old chap." Forbes Robertson regained his composure first. "We were just talking about you." Shane's hand hovered near his holstered weapon. "I find that interesting," he said in an even voice. But Forbes Robertson caught the glint of anger in the big detective's eyes. "What did you have in mind for me? A third share when you sell the golden Buda in Macau or Hong Kong?" Forbes Robertson smiled brightly. "That is our general idea, old fellow." "The hell it is," Stephanie flared. The Oriental trader's captain was framed in the doorway to the chart room behind the bridge. He was a powerful man with a full black beard and, to Shane's surprise, an Occidental. "You're on my bridge without permission," the captain growled at Shane. "American," Shane decided from his accent. "What is your business here, sir?" "I request permission," Shane said. Stephanie was livid with anger. "Granted," the captain said, glancing from Shane to Forbes Robertson to Stephanie, then back at the detective. "What is your business?" Forbes Robertson was discomfited, and Shane realized they'd probably connect the captain into taking his ship to a mainland port instead of San Francisco. "Where are we bound on your present course?" Shane asked the captain. "Macau, my first port of call." "Shane, for God's sake, let's discuss this privately," Forbes Robertson pleaded. "He doesn't understand our last-minute change of plans," he told the captain. "Damn you!" Stephanie lunged toward Shane before either the captain or Forbes Robertson could intervene. The dagger was in her raised hand. Shane had only time enough to sidestep her charge and missed catching her wrist when she stumbled past him. Stephanie spun around, sheer madness staring at the three men through her eyes, and they backed away. The frightened helmsman stared over his shoulder. "Bloody hell!" Forbes Robertson backed toward the open doorway leading to the port flying bridge. She'd gone stark, staring mad. Backing out onto the bridge, he slammed the door shut. The captain had retreated to the chart room doorway. Shane, poised on the balls of his feet, confronting Stephanie, said, "I'd better handle this, Captain." His eyes stayed locked with Stephanie's. Nodding quickly, the captain backed into the chart room. The helmsman, a Chinese, stared at Shane and the woman, letting the ship drift off course. "Damn it, Lee, watch your course," the captain roared at the helmsman. Lee spun the wheel a few spokes, then huddled as close to the wheel as he could get, eyes fixed on the compass. Stephanie, crouched, with the knife now ready for a gut-splitting upward slice, circled the bridge as Shane did. "The caper's finished," Shane said in a soothing voice. "You and Forbes Robertson planned it, using Chung Lee and then double-crossing him. Isn't that the way it was?" Saliva dripped from the downward curve of Stephanie's lips, and her face was an ugly mask of fury. $1 million in gold, she spit at Shane. "We had a buyer. The deal was made." Shane held out a hand. "Let me have the knife, Stephanie. Cutting me isn't going to help. Come on now." She threw herself at him. But this time Shane was ready, anticipated her move, thrust out a foot and tripped the woman. She went headlong to the steel deck. Face down, knife arm pressed under her body. She raised her face to stare into his as Shane knelt beside her. "I stabbed myself," Stephanie said it in a wondering voice, and the madness faded from her eyes. Her head fell forward, and her forehead bumped the deck. Gently, Shane turned the woman over on her back to feel for the pulse in her neck. There was no pulse. Stephanie's sightless eyes stared up at the overhead. Forbes Robertson came back into the wheelhouse, staring at Stephanie's body with a horrified expression on his face. "The bird killed herself." Shane faced the Englishman across Stephanie's limp body. He saw Forbes Robertson through a red haze of hate. His seduction of Dr. Stephanie Scott and tempting her with $1 million in gold had led to this. "You killed her," Shane accused. "How can you say that, old chap? She was a greedy bitch. Now you and I can make a deal." Shane took a quick step toward the man and pumped his right fist into his smug face. All Shane's weight and muscle was behind the punch. Forbes Robertson slammed back against the steel bulkhead behind him. The hollow thump of his head striking the bulkhead muffled the sharp crack of his neck. Glassy-eyed and gaping, the Englishman pitched forward to fall across the dead body of the woman. His legs kicked convulsively once, twice, and then he was still. Shane stared down at the bodies, rubbing the knuckles of his right hand. Then he looked up at the captain. "Take us back into port," Shane ordered. Mary Sue Lin and Shane were aboard a return flight to San Francisco. At Shane's suggestion, the American consul in Taipei, Joseph Beardsley, had arranged for the Golden Buddha and the rest of the exhibit to be flown directly to Florida aboard an Air Force C-130 as a goodwill gesture toward the Taiwanese. After what they'd been through together, Shane had become more than just fond of the slim Chinese girl, yet he couldn't find words to tell her how he felt. Mary Sue Lin touched his arm. "If you're too bashful to say it, I guess I must, Mike," she told him with a sigh. "I want you to spend some time with me when we reach San Francisco." Mike Shane Mystery Makers continued from page 4. Moving right along, we come to Richard Rhinesmith, who has published 25 novels and 600 short stories since 1949, more than 1 million words under his own name and 15 pseudonyms. Born in Pocomoke City, Maryland, Rhinesmith studied at Goldie Business College in Wilmington, Delaware. He joined the 101st Airborne Division, and after being given special training at the former Japanese Naval Academy in Etajima, he was assigned to the 8th Army during the Korean conflict, in which he received the United Nations Service Medal and the Korean Service Medal with 2 Bronze Stars. As a civilian, Dick Rhinesmith worked for construction and chemical companies, started writing part-time and then full-time in his Maryland farmhouse. When not in his hermitage, he enjoys yachting on Chesapeake Bay, fishing for blues and marlin in deeper waters, collecting money, and looking at beautiful women, though not necessarily in that order of importance. Dick's story in this issue is how to kill a hostage, and if you've got to go, well, it had to happen. Rents, food prices, the cost of gasoline, the basic stuff we need to live on, keeps going up, along with bus and airplane fares and movie tickets and so forth. At MSMM, we got another increase in the cost of producing your favorite mystery magazine. We absorb as much of the rising costs as we can, but there comes a time when we've no choice but to raise the cover price. Sorry about that. But there's a silver lining. MSMM is now 32 pages thicker. Don't ask me to explain that. I'm just an honest, sincere, hardworking editor. I leave Who Was the Killer? By Sandra W. Stange. The rich old miser was